Welcome in, welcome in. Welcome to Unmasked Universe, where we unmask the universe that lives inside of you. Okay, the last few videos have been longer, so I'm going to do a short video today. In this video, we're going to, I'm doing like a little bit of a series on some of the tools that you need in your Ascension Toolkit. Today's journey into the video is going to be regarding your thoughts. All right. Little known fact. Did you know that the majority of those thoughts going through your mind, cycling over and over and over and over on autopilot again and again, aren't your thoughts? Did you know that? So if they're not your thoughts, then whose thoughts are they? Well, that's a great question. The majority of the thoughts that are in your head are the negative criticisms that you've received throughout your whole life from other people. So they're the put downs, the shut downs, the criticisms, the negativity, all of the things that you've heard that created your inner critic. And now you're on repeat with all of that over and over and over and over. And I don't know about you, but I sure got tired of hearing those words being uttered to me, especially when I like obviously you're in the beginning of your journey here. This is when you want to utilize this tool. However, you can utilize it anytime, but this is a great way to start off your journey is by dissecting the thoughts that are in your head and really paying attention to them and writing them down when your mind starts to go into a negative spiral. So if you're ruminating or you're overthinking about a situation or you're overthinking about a person and you're up in your head too much, I want you to get a piece of paper and write down all the thoughts that are coming out of, or write down all the thoughts that are in your mind. And then I want you to look at them clearly. What you'll start to see is a pattern of one sort or another. And generally, this will indicate, like you can separate some of these things and you can see who possibly would have given you these thoughts. So it could have been a mother, could have been a father, could have been a sibling, could have been a terrible teacher, could have been a partner, could have been a boss. It could have been so many different people in your life. But the majority of that inner critic within you that's been running on autopilot is family based. So it's familial. And you've been operating on this system since you were a child. Scary, right? Yeah. Okay. So by doing this exercise, you begin to understand that these thoughts that you're having aren't even your thoughts. So if they're not helping you, then why would you want to keep them in the system? This is a great opportunity for you to start dissecting what it is that's going around in your mind and start deciding whether or not that's valuable or useful to you in any capacity. If it's something that is diminishing you in some way, then it's not beneficial to you. It's not beneficial to keep it. It's going to hinder you, and it continues to make your progress go slower and slower rather than jumping ahead quickly, because all of these thoughts will operate in the background system, and they're what dictate how you treat yourself, how you treat other people, how you feel. And often those, like from my experience, those things that were being told to me, I would never utter to another person. They were terrible thoughts. And the majority of them were not mine. In fact, the few that I did finally find were actually kind and loving. But that kind and loving part of me was so withered away from all of the negative thoughts that were in my mind that I could barely find her. And so this is common. when you go through it, you might be shocked. You might be surprised to see what comes out of your brain. And so what I'm going to say is you might feel shock and you might want to, curl up in a ball. You may want to pull back in disdain, but try not to judge yourself, okay? Because it's not your fault. You didn't realize that these thoughts, even it's crazy. It really is. It's crazy how we don't even like these thoughts are so present all the time and we don't even really hear them until we write them down. We really don't know the extent of how far, how deep, and how dark these thoughts can be sometimes, unless we write them down. And so I don't want you to judge yourself for the thoughts that are in your head because they've been in there since childhood and it was programmed into you. These are other people's beliefs, other people's thoughts, other people's way of treating people, right? They're other people's operating systems that are all limited, but that's the whole point of doing this exercise is so that you can not be so limited. You can break the barriers, break the chains, and liberate yourself. Okay? I'm just the facilitator. Through my own, I can set an example for you to liberate yourself, and by giving you the wisdom and the knowledge, and by giving you the knowledge you can do with it what you want to liberate yourself in your own fashion and right. So when we deconstruct our thoughts, we then have to try to eliminate them. And that is easier said than done sometimes because if we don't know what we're doing, then we can actually make it worse. So understand that whatever thoughts are operating, you still need like an operating system. But you need to understand how to navigate that system as it functions within your own brain. Okay, so anytime you're doing things where your brain is in a lull state, so saying like anything that you would normally do on autopilot around the home or in your life, this is when your brain starts reeling in these thoughts. Okay, and it can happen when you're daydreaming, it can happen while you're doing just regular things, or it can happen when you're triggered. If you have an emotional response, you will have a bunch of these thoughts. This is what we call rumination coming forward, okay? So becoming aware of them. And now that you've written your list down, you know what these thoughts are, you become hyper vigilant of the thoughts that are coming in that replicate that list. So even if they seem remotely familiar, you're going to be very aware. Hey, I didn't like those thoughts. I wouldn't say that to somebody else, so I'm not going to say that to myself. Okay? Use your physiology, clap your hands, or do it on your legs. You can use your physiology to send a message to your brain right away as a response to stop and pay attention for a moment. And then you insert the new positive programming, the new positive words and thoughts that you'd rather tell yourself. Another way that you can do this is if you start going into a rumination cycle that you're finding difficult because you're worked up or you're getting anxious or you're getting angry or frustrated or whatever sets you off. If you start finding yourself going into that spiral, imagine a stop sign. Okay? Visualize a stop sign. And then take a few deep breaths and count to 20. Not 10, not 5, but 20. And then open your eyes and insert the new thoughts. And maybe if you're getting really worked up, you need to insert a bunch of things. And these are all going to be things that you would love to hear. So these are all the things that you're going to say about yourself that you love about yourself. How cool you are, how amazing you are, how regulated your emotions are, how peaceful you are, how zen you are, how strong you are, how brilliant you are, whatever it is that you need to give yourself that opposes all of those other feelings and thoughts that you just had, you're going to rewrite that narrative in your brain, and you're going to disconnect from the thoughts themselves, realizing that you have thoughts. Yes, everybody has thoughts. But the misconception is that our thoughts are what make us, that we are somehow our thoughts when we are not. We're not our thoughts. So again, you and I both have thoughts. Sometimes people have really great thoughts. A lot of times people aren't even aware of their thoughts. This is the autopilot situation we're dealing with here. Other times you might have intrusive thoughts. Other times, if you're angry, you might have really rageful thoughts. Like you can have all kinds of thoughts. But does that mean that just because you have negative thoughts about yourself or about anybody else, that gets to determine who you are? Does it determine your character? Absolutely not. It's a choice. Now, if you allow yourself to continue to follow the direction of these thoughts, that means allowing them to dictate your life for you and keep you down and suppressed, then that's still your choice. But once you become aware that you have an opportunity to actually disassociate from those thoughts altogether and reinstill new positive foundations for your thought patterns, then that is what becomes your new version of self. So you're not tied to your thoughts in any way, shape, or form. And along the journey, don't feel bad if suddenly you revert into negative thoughts or bad thoughts or even self-depreciation, because it happens. You're called a human just like everybody else. And that happens all the time. I mean, just because you're on a spiritual journey does not mean that you're going to be 100% perfect. And anybody that assumes that the spiritual journey is about perfection is way off course. They're living in some sort of delusional state, because that's not what it's about. It's not about perfection. It's actually just about finding your authentic self and knowing that being a human means that you're going to be imperfect. But because you're imperfect, that actually makes you beautifully perfect. So embrace that and don't allow any of your falters back into old ways of programming based on what you're going through from day to day to sway you back into the old ways of being. Be persistent. Changing the neuro linguistic programming of your mind takes a lot of persistence. And if you're living in a chronic state of flight or fight or PTSD, it can take longer. But I am living proof that you can change your thoughts. You can change the way that you associate with those thoughts. And by doing that, you're placing distance in between them, recognizing that you have thoughts, but you're your own entity. And your thoughts don't have to drive you. They don't have to power you in any way, shape, or form, because you, as your own entity with your own autonomy, act in accordance to how you wish to act. And just because you have certain thoughts doesn't mean that that's who you are. That doesn't mean that's who you are at the core, and doesn't represent your value system. It doesn't, it doesn't represent anything but the toxic shame and guilt that's been projected at you for years, likely, or the rigid systems that you had to grow up in, or black and white thinking, or whatever it may be. These aren't yours. And you don't have to abide by any thought that comes in your head. That would be like saying, well, just because I'm having thoughts, angry thoughts about hurting somebody, that means I need to act on that now. No, absolutely not. Same is true with these depreciating thoughts that we tell ourselves. If we're telling ourselves we're these horrible things, doesn't mean we have to continue listening to that. Would you listen to somebody if they came up to you and they started telling you everything negative about yourself and, depreciating you in front of other people, demeaning you? Or would you try to get out of that situation as quickly as possible? Likely you'd probably walk away, right? Same is true for your mind. But with your mind, you have to reprogram it too. You can't just remove the operating system. It's a natural part of being alive. That part of your brain is a natural part of being alive. And so therefore, it needs an operating system. And that's up to you to decide, okay, how do I counter the thoughts that used to be in there? Well, you're going to put in the exact opposite. So if you don't like the thoughts that you wrote down, write down a list of the exact opposite and have it pasted in every place that you need to have it in your home or your work environment or in your car. And every time you have those thoughts, you're going to counter it with the other thoughts and say, no, I decide that I am this, or change, okay? Or stop sign method, and reprogram your mind. Because the other thing is that often what people don't understand about thoughts is that until you're completely aware of how this functions in the body and how it drives you, you go about life in this state of almost victimhood. Like you're victimizing yourself in a sense because you're unaware that the impulse that those thoughts are creating within your mind turn on a subset of emotions, and those emotions that you feel can be amplified by the thoughts and grow and grow and grow, setting you off into motion, into taking physical action, usually not in a great way. It can be anger, or it could be, doing things that are harmful for yourself or to others, or, you know, your thoughts set off a pattern within your body of how you behave. So it starts in the thoughts, it activates the emotions and the emotional body within you, which then drives your actions. And then often we're not very satisfied with the end result. So then it drives a cycle of self abuse. And so this is where we start to depreciate ourselves even more. And then it releases, or it sets off the emotional body again. And then, do you see, it just keeps going. And you can get out of that loop, and you have the opportunity to actually put an end to that by understanding that you have a choice what to think, but you also have a choice as to whether or not you allow the thoughts in your head to drive your emotions. And that's kind of the next video, I think, is that the emotional regulation that is required in order to take down the system of thought and then put a block in between how that drives you, understanding that you're not driven by your thoughts. If you allow space between them and you allow yourself to reprogram your mind. All right, I'm going to leave it here because we're at 19 minutes. So I love you all very much. Thank you so much for being here. I'm grateful for every single one of you. If you're interested in receiving a free energy clearing session with me I'll be announcing it on January 15th. Please leave a comment, subscribe, and give it a thumbs up. I will leave my email in the description box below if you're interested in any of my services for energy work, healing work. I will be getting into readings soon here, so if you're looking for channeled messages, then you can look for that in the future. Otherwise, I'll see you all in the next video. I love you. Bye.